Hey guys, welcome back to the Portakeeper YouTube channel. I haven't really posted here in quite a while because the majority of my content is going on the Espresso Outlet TRer YouTube channel. But since we don't sell either of these products, and I've been getting a lot of questions, kind of known as the Kaleido guy in the United States, I'm a huge Kaleido Roasters fan. Espresso Outlet sells Kaleido Roasters, but I've kind of played around with some of these Skywalker roasters, and you can see off to the left I have the V1 Skywalker, and I've used it a little bit. We'll talk about that here in a second. I don't really want to make this a very long video, but I just want to kind of highlight some of the differences between these two. And I've been playing with the new one a little bit. It's been very cold here, so I haven't really gotten a chance to put it through all its paces, but just to kind of share some of the information that I have since I have both of these, I wanted to get it out there for you guys. So I'm not really going to go over the version 1 Skywalker. It's been out for quite a while. You can see that it has this really simple touch display over here, and on the back it has some profile codes. So if you're going to roast on a profile or a predetermined profile, you can input that profile and it's going to roast to that profile curve. Now I've really gotten so used to using a true profile roaster that most of their profiles I find a bit dark for my personal taste. So I found myself having to use times and temperatures and kind of referring to some graphs that I've made on Artisan to see when my dry time is probably going to end and first crack and so on. So kind of annoying, but that's why they came out with the Skywalker version 2. So over here we got the Skywalker version 2, and really overall, the build is probably like 90% the same. I have noticed quite a few welcome improvements to the version 2 in terms of like the cooling tray, the bean dump in the top is much larger, and we're gonna go over that in a little bit more detail here in a minute, but you can see that it has this nice touch display, and I would say it's mostly intuitive. It doesn't come with this stand. This is a just phone stand that I had laying around that I'm using for this video. To turn on the drum, for example, you can just hit the plus and the minus buttons. You have your settings screen for your auto, manual, standby. You can turn on and off your cooling. You can turn up and down your filter fan. And you'll notice that it has Bluetooth, and this is probably the most exciting part of this roaster. Since it does have Bluetooth, it's going to allow you to connect to Artisan, which we'll do probably another video on that another day, but that's probably my most exciting portion about this roaster, is the ability to connect to Bluetooth. You can see at the bottom they actually have some profiles similar to the profiles that are on the back of the version 1. I've not played with this enough to see if you can share the profiles or download new profiles. I really have not played with it enough. I just got this a few days ago. So overall, I'm not going to preheat this, but you can go to your preheat. You can set your charge temperature and click start. It will eventually reach its charge temperature, and then it will have kind of the same, more or less, functions that Artisan has to go through the roast. It has your start and your eject, some terminology that maybe is a little bit different from some of the terminology that I use on Kaleido. I roast pretty much in Celsius, and that's just how my mind works for graphs. But if you wanted to change it to Fahrenheit, I know a lot of you like Fahrenheit, you can easily change it over to Fahrenheit. It was a little bit confusing when I did a Artisan roast. I pretty much needed to completely disconnect from the roaster, disconnect from Bluetooth, restart the roaster to change to Celsius, and then I turned Bluetooth back on and reconnected. Otherwise, I could tell Artisan was getting a little bit confused. Is this getting a Celsius value or a Fahrenheit value? So that is something that maybe we'll do a video on, I don't know, but I wanted to share that with you. So very cool overall. Let's do just a quick overview of the roasters and some of the similarities and differences. Let's just do a quick back and forth on some of the features. This is one thing that has driven me crazy. As this roaster heats up, I can't get this drawer out very well. I think it was just a very tight fit in the beginning, and I've just always struggled with the drawer. It does eventually come out. I'm usually way past when I need to drop my beans. I try to pull it out a little bit ahead of time just to be prepared for that. But I found that to be just not really the best design on this roaster. It looks cool. It works okay. When you do dump your beans, it takes quite a while to get all the beans out. And the thing that I didn't care for was these beans aren't getting cool if they're not pushed all the way back in. So if you have those straggler beans that take forever to come out, that's a little bit annoying, but I think that's just one of the quirks of the roaster. Over on the version 2, you can see it comes out much easier. Even when it was heated up, I had no problem getting it to pull out. You can pull out your cooling bin afterwards, so if you wanted to dump your beans, a lot easier, you can do that. And the dump door seems quite a bit bigger, but I still had the same issue of those straggler beans that just wanted to toss around in there for a while before they finally came out. So that's going to delay some of your cooling process. Now you can always have this over a lip, and if you're familiar with the design, the beans do actually fall through all the way through. So you could just kind of shut it and those straggler beans can come out. You can kind of scoop them in your hand and throw them in. You could technically do that on the version 1 as well, but that's kind of one of my pet peeves on the roaster are these cooling trays. So you're kind of able to see it a minute ago. Again, we're on the version 1 Skywalker and we have our dump door. And I know it's supposed to stay open. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It feels really thin, but it does do a job of keeping the door shut. You can see that there is a round sight glass. It's kind of difficult to see because you have this heat shield in the way, so you kind of have to look down to look in to see your beans moving. On the version 2, it's going to be fairly similar. I think it's quite a bit wider overall, and it does have a more firm lock in place. So when you're trying to keep it open to get all those stray beans out, it seemed to stay open a lot better for me. You can see that the window is a square shape rather than round. I don't know if it's really that much of an improved angle, but it does have a slightly bigger viewing area, so that may be something that is kind of nice as you're looking for those changes. So one of the things that I wish they had done a better job on originally was to put a better TRer in. And it's not really that the TRer is that bad, it just doesn't want to stay in place. It's pretty loose. I mean, you barely turn it and it's going to come out. I had some issues where I would gather some beans, and as I was pulling them out, one would fall off the side, then you're trying to scrape it out of the way, losing a bean to put it back in. So the thing that I do like is it does have this captive end cap, which is really nice because when you're trying to pull them out, some of them have an open end cap and it can drop some beans like what I mentioned a minute ago. So a little bit annoying. And kind of unfortunately, it's the same TRer. So I mean, it doesn't really fit in there much better. It's still pretty loose, maybe a little bit tighter. Still had some of the issues with beans coming out on accident if it was a little bit too full. It does this job. It's not the worst TRer. I just wish that it had been just a little bit more well built. Now for a very welcome improvement. So on the version 1, you have your green bean chute and you pull up your little door and you try to get your beans in there. If you have one of these roasters, you probably know it's pretty difficult to get all your beans in. Maybe you have some sort of a special funnel. I've seen some people make some special funnels. I actually use an old hopper that I use for roasting, and I just kind of rest it on the edge, and they do usually go in, but I usually get a couple green beans that go astray. It's kind of difficult to get this back in. It's usually kind of hot. I wish it was more captive in place, but it does do a pretty good job, and it's a simple design. So as you can tell in the version 2, it's much bigger. I mean, it's a little bit wider, but you have this very large mouth opening where the other one is a very small opening, and you were trying to get all your beans in. So I still use the same hopper, but it's really easy to pull this out, dump them in, put this back in. I also will note that this shut-off gate is much easier to put in on this roaster. So nothing too crazy. The chaff bins are pretty much the same on both of these. I bet they even interchange. So no real improvements to the chaff collection system. You can see how the fit on this, I just feel like this metal is a bit thinner, and this just feels just a little bit thicker metal, which is, in my opinion, really welcome because this version 1 was quite thin. This version 2 just seems to have a little bit more mass to it, or a little bit more, less springiness on its sides. So the backs of the roasters are more or less the same. They do look a little bit different. We'll do a kind of zoomed out side by side here in a minute. You have your fan guard for your cooling system, so that's to cool your beans. You have a regular USB-A plug for your controller, so that plugs into that. And then you have a USB-C plug for your fan if you choose to use it. You don't really have to use this, and I find it to be kind of awkward, honestly. I like to use some sort of a duct, but it does have this filtration system. If you've not seen it, it has a carbon filter in there and a small fan in the top. So it doesn't do the best job of keeping smoke out of, like, let's say you're roasting in your kitchen, but it's still probably better if you're breathing in that smoke and you weren't exhausting it outside very well. The back of the version 2, you can tell, is pretty much the same, but it does have a bump out for your motor. It has a small cooling fan for your control board. And in this case, it actually has 2 USB ports. So your first USB is a USB-A for your tablet. So when you plug it in, you can have your tablet. And so far, I've just used Bluetooth. Bluetooth really wasn't an issue for me, but supposedly you can use the USB-A cable to plug into your laptop. I've not really researched that. I've not really had any issues with Bluetooth, so that's what I've been using the few times that I've used this. So there's this kind of like a side-by-side of the back. You can see it's more or less a similar design. You do have the different number of USB ports. On the new version, you do have some additional cooling for your control board, which is really nice to have, but very similar in design, same size, same shape, not a whole lot different. So again, just to kind of wrap things up, I mean, I don't think too many people are fortunate enough to have access to both of these, so I thought it'd be a fun time to do a just side-by-side comparison video. I kind of thought maybe that the new version would be a little bit more different than the original version, but I have been asked the question already by a few people, can I just buy the new tablet screen? The answer is no, you really can't. It has a different internal control board. As far as retrofitting, I really don't know. Honestly, I would probably just buy the version 2 roaster if you're looking for that fully integrated artisan experience. So I know a lot of you guys, you use like fidgets and stuff, and you'll put fidgets on your version 1, and that's great because you can actually see your roast profile. But on the version 2, it actually does more than that, and you can do auto roasting, kind of similar to like what you can do with Kaleido. I don't really like to use the term auto roast because anytime I think a lot of people hear it, they think it's like hitting popcorn on your microwave and it pops your popcorn, and that's really not true. It's more of once you figure out how to roast the bean and you develop a profile that you like, you can save that and you can repeat that profile again and again. Now you will have environmental factors like it's freezing cold here, and if I was to roast the same in the summer, very humid out, it's going to roast probably quite a bit different, but it's still a pretty good starting point, so I really do like the ability. It does control the roaster through Artisan. On the fidget version, all you're really getting is the graph feedback. So I think that's one main key important thing that people may or may not realize about like the fidget Artisan and what the version 2 can do. But that's really it for today. We're not really promoting this, more just informational stuff. I'll probably do a video on how to connect to Artisan because I've become just very familiar with Artisan. I didn't have any issues, but I noticed a lot of people are having issues connecting. You do need an ASET file. It's not a really big deal to load. Once you know how to load it, you can get going with it. But for today, let me know what you think about these roasters. Do you have any of these roasters? Are you roasting on anything else? SR800s, B-Mores? Comment below. And just consider hitting like and subscribe. I probably need to get back to my Portakeeper YouTube channel and post more cool content like this. But for today, I appreciate you guys watching.